Happy Saturday, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Doc, a Wake County Townhall meeting. We are so excited that you decided to join us on a very sunny, brisk day where you could be outside doing so many things. But what is better than hearing from our area docs and our young, brilliant minds as it relates to our health, not only here in the state of North Carolina, but in Wake County. I am Dr. Bobby Banks. I'm the founder and CEO of Pillar Consulting and also an adjunct assistant professor at UNC Chapel Hill. I will serve as half of the moderation greatness today. We also have...
I'm Aaron Azcona. I'm with El Centro Hispano with their JLA program, but I'm also president of the Youth Health Council, and I'm with Dr. Bobby here with their Not a Host program. And check out the tables all there, 6 to 8 and 10, and just putting your initials to enter the raffle.
Aaron is our future, can I share that? Yeah. Our future EGOT here. So if you want to learn more about the great work and the other groups that he's working with, the other brilliant minds as part of the Health Lit for Wake team, please do go to tables 6, 8, and 10. This is just a shameless plug. I'm a baby in my family, so I have a little spirit of competition. If you'd like to be considered for the raffle, the tables he's referencing are here in the program. Stop by 6, 8, and 10. Grateful to the folks on the program who made this possible, Health Lit for Wake, Wake County Government, and 4-H, and Southeast Raleigh Promise, and so many other folks. The formal name of this town hall is Mind Over Matter, empowering youth to address mental health, vaping, and COVID-19. This event has been made possible by the very people on your program, the Youth Council, and they have a great activity for the folks who I know are going to stick around. Who's done bingo before? Who's done bingo? How loud can we yell for bingo in the library is the question. We usually help our multi-generational crowds and say, to give a prompt like, old people yell like we used to, and it's like, bingo! We'll keep it low tone today, but our young people will lead a bingo activity, so make sure you stick around after this panel to take a part of that. And so the council, what I hear, is a volunteer leadership opportunity open to all 9th to 12th graders here in Wake County. So we have thought in the public health community that the young, bright folks that we've been waiting for are the ones who are the young minds who are on TikTok and everywhere else. So thanks to Wake County leadership for pulling together that council. I've been told I have to read this script as is, so pray for me. Oh, I'm not a Star Trekky person, or is it Star Wars? It's Star Wars. Star Wars, may the 4th be with you. Is today that day? Yeah. Ha ha ha. How you like me now? All right. So before discussing the topics of mental health and vaping, making sure I'm following here. We want to share some updates about COVID-19 and how to continue protecting yourself and loved ones. A lot of people think it is over. It is not over yet. Currently, we're seeing the impacts of long COVID, which are lasting symptoms or complications after infection that last for weeks, months, or even years. This can include a wide range of symptoms from respiratory issues, hair loss, to trouble with concentration. COVID-19 can not only affect our breathing, but there are other long-term impacts that can affect the whole body, including other organs and systems in your body. Through various studies over the years, we've learned that keeping up with COVID-19 vaccinations is very important. We know that the first dose can reduce your risk by 21%. Second dose can reduce your risk by 59%. Third and 3+. So 3 or more doses reduce your risk by 73%. I'm going to say that again. First dose reduces your risk by 21, second dose by 59, third or more by 73. Part of what we talk about in our program is risk and informed decision making, so know your risk and the benefits of vaccination. It's recommended that everyone 6 months and up gets the latest vaccine, which provides protection against the new variants. If you may be more at risk, you can discuss with your doctor getting additional doses. While the vaccine is no longer free, programs like the Bridge Access Program can cover the full cost if you're uninsured and can't afford it. What's the name of the program, Aaron? Right here, Aaron. Yeah.
Bridge Access Program.
Thank you, Aaron. All right. You could also visit vaccines.gov to enter your zip code to find a local facility near you. Page 1. So as we dive into these health topics, and I'm excited to introduce our beautiful, colorful panelists today, I'm just going to give you a little bit more information because we're covering 3 topics here today. So I just gave you some information about COVID, long COVID. The next thing is mental health. Who felt great during the pandemic? Right. So mental health, many have seen now, is an important or essential aspect of our overall well-being, encompassing our emotional, our psychological, and our social state of mind. It's important to acknowledge that mental health issues are common and can impact anyone, regardless of who you are or where you're from. So thinking about age, background, and circumstances. Today, we're focusing on young folks, young people, as adolescence is a particularly important period for developing social and emotional habits, which can extend into adulthood. So we know that depression, anxiety, and behavioral disorders, I have had my caffeine today, are among leading causes of illness among adolescents. Factors contributing to stress can include exposure to adversity, pressure to be like your peers, media influence, and other societal issues. For example, 69% of youth ages 12 to 17 have said they've experienced a major depressive episode during the first year of the pandemic. We hope today, in addition to COVID as a condition, to also bring attention to mental health, how they impact young people, and spark a conversation here in the community. The final issue, who remembers the third thing? Yeah, Dr. Bobby gives pop quizzes. So close, yes. Vaping, all right. So the final issue we'll discuss is the vaping epidemic in youth in the US and here at home in North Carolina. E-cigarettes, commonly called vapes, are battery-powered devices that include e-liquid, which often contain nicotine and other harmful chemicals. While e-cigarettes are marketed as a, quote, safer alternative, end quote, to smoking and nicotine quitting tools, vapes are renormalizing smoking and priming the developing adolescent brain for, again, lifelong issues or addictions. Since the emergence of vape products, youth tobacco use has significantly increased in e-cigarettes, and they continue to be the most used tobacco products by youth. So you were correct. Okay. Between 2011 and 2019, e-cigarette use among North Carolina high school students increased by 1,129%. In 2022, it was estimated that over 43,500 high school students in North Carolina used e-cigarettes, and vaping can cause irreversible lung damage and have lasting impacts on memory and attention. Last one. Additionally, it's crucial to acknowledge historical context. As African American, Black populations, other historically marginalized populations have been harmed by unjust practices related to the sale of commercial tobacco for centuries. Big tobacco and now vaping companies have long employed predatory marketing practices, specifically to Black communities and neighborhoods. To increase sales, tobacco companies use price promotions such as discounts, get your multi-pack coupons in neighborhoods with the higher concentration of Black folks. Also, tobacco companies supported HBCUs, or historically Black colleges and universities, shout out to the great Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, by donating to these establishments, providing students with scholarships, or supporting cultural events designed to attract the Black community. Vaping companies have continued these predatory tactics and use additional strategies to appeal to young people, like paying influencers on social media to promote products. Gaps in regulation have allowed e-cigarette companies to develop enticing candy and fruit flavors to appeal to younger audience, though these are banned in traditional tobacco products. Now we'll move into the panel discussion. The other experts outside of expert Aaron, the EGOT, we have clinicians and advocates and public health folks joining us. I'm going to introduce them formally. We have Dr. Melissa Stansel, who is the owner of Opal Wellbeing and also who serves as an adjunct professor at Campbell University's Department of Public Health. And fun fact, she trained 2 people who are here today, one on the panel and one on the team putting on this event. Circle of life. All right. The next one is Dr. Danielle Roberson-Keaton, who works for Wake Med in adult and child adolescent psychiatry. If you can give them a wave. Full legal. All right. We also have Dr. Bulu Abe-Lathan. Sorry, I have too much going on up here. Thank you so much. I'm losing papers. Who is a physician associate. I got sidetracked with the doctoral program with Duke Smoking and Tobacco Cessation. And finally, we have, now I have your thing with me too. I don't know what I'm doing. All right. We have Nene Assi, who is the Youth and Young Adult Tobacco Treatment Coordinator at North Carolina DHHS's Tobacco Prevention and Control Branch. All right, without further ado, we will begin our discussions with some questions for our panelists. If we can give them a quick round of applause, and thank you for waiting through that monologue. My gosh. I would love to start with the young people. Is that okay? All right, Aaron, tell us what the young people, or what are the young people asking, or what would they like to know of our panelists?
So one of the questions was, what are some things young people can do to maintain a healthy mindset?
I guess I'll take that first. So again, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I also see adults as well. I would say one thing that is really important for everybody to know, especially kids, is to making sure you're maintaining a balance. So a balance with your academic responsibilities, a balance with your social engagement, and a balance with your family and those who are your support. So oftentimes when those things get out of balance is when you get stressed and overwhelmed. So it could be any of those areas that are increasing, depression or anxiety in your life, but making sure that everybody kind of has all those things that's important to them will help, maintain your stability and functioning. One thing also that I would mention is that sleep is extremely important. So even when you're little, your parents are guiding your sleep and telling you need to take a nap. And so then as we grow and we get into our teenage years, it's easier for you to be more independent and kind of more responsible for putting yourself to bed and making sure you're getting up on time. But parents and guardians should still be kind of responsible for making sure that that pattern of sleep is still consistent even on the weekends, because when kids don't get enough sleep, even adults don't get enough sleep, your brain just doesn't have the energy to focus. And so trying to go through a full academic day with very little sleep, it just sets you up for failure. So those are really, really important things that I can think of to keep you healthy overall.
Thank you. And then how do you confront someone, comfort someone dealing with mental health problems?
That's a tricky question. So it really depends on your relationship with the person, I would say. So if you're talking about a friend that trusts you and you are comfortable being real with, then you listen first before you give advice. And you do need to always involve someone that is an adult. So if someone is really struggling and there's a safety concern, you listen, but you always have to reach out to a guardian or an adult or a teacher or someone that is more responsible than we as young people are. And then just knowing that you can only do so much for that person. You are not responsible for their actions. You are not responsible for their safety. A lot of kids that I see, they feel like they need to be responsible for a friend or a family member when they're going through their own mental health struggles. And it's not set up like that. Kids are not able to manage their own stress as well as the adults or their friends around them. So you can be there to listen. You provide advice within your means, but you always refer them to an adult that can be someone that they can rely on.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question kind of to that, and then we'll jump into the vaping and the COVID-19 questions. You mentioned someone struggling. I think with our generation, like we know the word depression, but we don't know the symptoms of depression. So how will young people know? Because a lot of folks in this pandemic were like, I can't remember anything. So loss of concentration, like you're off, or your memory loss. Like what sorts of things should young people think about to know that they are struggling outside of like people getting on my nerves? So what does that struggle look like? How do you know that your mental health may not be at its prime?
So I'll break it up into two different things, because depression is a big thing. People say depressed and they may not know what it means. And anxiety is also a very big thing that I think we ignore as well. So for depression, in terms of like clinical depression, so we're talking about someone that has symptoms of a mood disorder over a period of time. So it's normal for kids to say, I'm bored, I have nothing to do, I'm sad, or I had a bad day. That's not depression. So the depression that we're talking about is when you're so down that you don't enjoy the things that you normally would enjoy. You kind of just seem like you're in a funk all the time. It could be sadness, but it could be irritability. So if your child is always on edge and you're just like, I don't know what's getting into them, and they're withdrawn or they're isolated from their friends or they're just in their room and they're just like, what's the matter? I don't know. Sometimes kids say I'm bored, and that can also be a sign of depression. They're just bored. They just don't know. And you're like, you know, but they can't really describe what they're feeling. Lack of energy, always being tired. So they could be sleeping more than they should, or they could be having a really hard time falling asleep. Low motivation, like they don't want to do anything. It's hard to take care of their daily routine, get in the shower, their hair is messy. You know, if you have a teenage girl and she typically is like caring about her appearance, but then she's more like, you know, waking up and not really wanting to find the time to like do her normal routine. Those are all signs of depression. If this goes on for several weeks, that's when we're talking about like a clinical episode of depression. Kids have bad days. Bad days don't mean anything. We all have bad days. So those are not depression, those are just bad days. But when you see a pattern of these behaviors, that's when you're talking about like an episode of depression, and that's when you really should be reaching out for help. Anxiety is something that we often miss in our families and parents, because you don't pick up on those things so easy, like someone who is sad and just looks off. The anxiety can lead to depression because you're constantly worried. So if your mind is worried about every little thing or the future, or I'm not good enough, or something that happened in the past and you can't move past it, then that kind of takes more space and you can't concentrate in class. You're constantly worried, you can't sleep, so then your day is messed up the next day. So those are things that I would say is like important to pay attention to in terms of like mood disorders, but really making sure that there's a balance in your life. Like stress is normal, but when things are out of balance, then that's when you get the anxiety, that's when you get the sadness and depression, and you're not able to attend to your like daily routine.
Dr. Stansel, I know this is also your wheelhouse. Your organization is actually well-being, and you are also, I see DRPH, your public health. Can you share with us kind of your perspectives or anything else to add as it relates to well-being and wellness for young people?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Dr. Robertson-Keaton just said. I can give a quick kind of personal example of kind of when I'm tracking my own mental health that maybe would be helpful. So this piece that that we were talking about irritability, like again, we all have bad days. We all have times where we get torn out of the frame a little bit. One of the things as a person, you know, I'm a therapist, but I'm also a person living with depression. So how I kind of keep track of like, oh, I might need to be like a little more careful. Something might be going on. This is one of the things that happens for me without fail. If I scream at my dog. I know, I'm embarrassed to say it out loud, but I want to be honest about it, because I know my precious 14-year-old old lady hound dog Mutt, if she's just being an old lady dog and I scream at her, something's out of balance. something's out of balance for me, and I'm like, oh man, actually, I think I wanna be a little more careful, and I might want to reach out to my therapist. Might want to reach out to a friend, because that balance piece is just so important. That irritability where you're like, oh, where is this coming from? I'm not even sure what it's about. Something's going on. Just talk to somebody you trust. And there's two other quick things I would add. One is related to what we call trauma, because I specialize in trauma in my private practice. Trauma is a bunch of different things. It's how your body responds to something super overwhelming, okay? So we're all strong in different ways. Stress is kind of like if you're holding a weight out here, depending on how resilient you are or strong might be how long you can hold it. That's kind of like stress, okay? Trauma is a car falling on you, okay? It like your body's just not meant to take it. And there's lots of ways, particularly during COVID, that we all experienced more trauma. Maybe we were stuck in houses that weren't safe for us. Maybe we were stuck in other situations that weren't safe. So part of how that shows up is a lot of what Dr. Robertson Keaton was talking about. It can be anxiety, it can be depression, but you want to pay attention to what's happening in your body. Is my heart beating fast? Is my stomach upset? Do I feel like I have to throw up? Maybe I've got diarrhea. Like all kinds of stuff can end up happening in your body. So you want to confide in an adult to let them know what's happening so that they can help you. Because the good news is we got great treatment for this stuff, really good. We just want to make sure you can access it. And then the last thing, I was telling Nene about this, I actually specialize in nature-based wellness, this well-being piece. So we're meant to be outside. Like it really, really matters. Really, really matters. It's part of a lot of people's spirituality and faith. So getting some time outside in a safe place that works for you is incredibly important for maintaining your mental health. Those are the things I would kind of offer and kind of add in. Yeah. Does that help?
Does that help young people?
Okay.
I also want to add, and I'm not a mental health person, but I know during the pandemic when the rest of the world was at 50% capacity or 25% capacity, a lot of folks were still expected to produce at 100, including our students, including folks in the community doing the work. And it's like, well, my contractor is coming from their third funeral this week, and I know your deadline says Thursday, but I would hope you could make some concessions given the circumstances. And so when you guys were talking, I was thinking about the irritability. You have one more time to ask me about this deadline. And it took a friend telling me, like, you're yelling at me right now. I'm like, well, this whole day people have been asking for things, and I'm dealing with folks coming from terrible things happening in their lives. I also saw a headline, and I don't know if it was credible news or we're gonna talk about social media in a minute, that dentists saw an increase in people grinding their teeth during the pandemic. And I went into my Google hole, and that is a stress risk. Okay, tell us about it so young people can also know.
Oh, goodness. So there's.
I'm not expecting you to be a dentist, just for the record.
I'm not a dentist. But stress is stored in your body, it's in your body. So that might look like grinding your teeth. You can actually see sometimes where your teeth have been ground into a certain shape. I'm happy to show you mine later from when I used to grind my teeth. But there's all kinds of ways it shows up in your body. Sometimes it's like you don't realize it, but your shoulders are up here. That might be happening right now. It might be happening for us if we're nervous up here, And so you want to make this effort to kind of have your shoulders drop. But there's all kinds of ways in terms of the chemicals happening in your brain. They're resulting in all kinds of stuff because it's all connected. And there may be more details that are helpful for Doctor to share.
And stress is what.
I think she covered it.
Stress is not meant to sit in our bodies. You're supposed to get it out. And so if it's sitting in your body's going to try to cope the best way it knows how. Wow. Any questions from the audience? We have a few more, and then we're going to move on to the next topic. Thank you for sharing that. And the nature piece. I was sharing with a colleague, I don't think we were meant to wake up in the morning and for 8 hours be 100% productive. So I feel like back in the day, it was just like, open your door, go tend to the fields, teach the kids in the barn, if you own the land. And I'm just like, this this is not it. Our bodies weren't designed to do this, and we're trying to make it normal, and then we beat ourselves up for not. When we're supposed to be outside with our feet on the ground so our feet can feel the earth, and getting vitamin D from the sun, and breathing fresh air, not funky breath and COVID-19. Any questions? We're going to go on to the last few here. I'm a qualitative researcher, so silence does not make me uncomfortable, but I know we're on a clock. All right. Last question for mental health folks, and then we'll jump on to vaping. This technically is not highlighted as a youth question. Do you want me to go ahead? Okay. So, social media, mental health. Oh my gosh, I got 300 likes on my picture. Tell us what you have seen with the relationship, because what happened in the pandemic is we all had tighter access to our devices. Tell us about the impact of social media on mental health for young people, and then as part of that, if you have ways for them to keep their brains healthy as they are engaging.
It's a terrible, terrible thing.
I know.
Kids probably won't like me because it's a terrible thing. So there are some positives to it because of the connection and the community that people can identify with. But what kids are dealing with right now, the social media aspect of it creates such it amplifies it. The bullying, back in the day when I was in school, the bullying was confined to the school. You come home and you escape from it. But when you get bullying now, it's on the internet forever and it doesn't go away. And the images and the putting your body on this person's face and the lists of all the critiques of your body. I mean, the girls are really, and it starts in elementary school, unfortunately. And so I've noticed an incline of all of this social media stress and the bullying with our teenagers as well as our little people, because even the little ones have access to tablets and phones and the addiction to the screens. So it's really something that can be helpful, but we need to have ways to monitor it and kind of keep tabs on what our children and our teens are doing on those, even gaming, because they're innocent, they're able to connect with people through games. Thank you. So it can be really unsafe as well. And so the safety piece is so important. And like with all of those things, it's really important that you censor it and and a lot of times I recommend that families keep the computer in the public space. So the computer for the family, it's in the kitchen. They get their tablets and their laptops to do homework, but really you shouldn't be in your room alone. You shouldn't be on the computer alone. It should be in a public space so you can know what your kids are doing on it. I'm going to leave it at that.
Kids, she's telling you to stay in the kitchen with your computers, in the common room.
I echo everything that she just said. I'm not a social media person myself, but I'm also middle-aged, so maybe that's part of it. But two things I'll add is one other sort of scary thing, and then one positive thing. Dr. Robertson-Keaton mentioned that there are some positive things about connections. And so for teens and young people who are really isolated for a lot of complex reasons, then social media can be a life-saving connection, particularly for our queer and trans kiddos. It can be a really important way for them to connect with other people so that they don't feel as much like an outsider. So that is a really, really positive piece. And then adding to some of the complexities here, anything that has you scroll, there's so, I don't even know them all. Instagram, TikTok, you would have to help me with the other ones. Twitter, anything that has you scroll. The data that we now have, they've been doing all kinds of research, all kinds of stuff, is that it impairs your body's natural ability to produce dopamine. So dopamine is one, and this is preliminary stuff, we're all learning. But dopamine is this one chemical that you need for all kinds of stuff. But a key thing you need it for in your brain is to complete a task. and to be able to sustain motivation. And anytime you scroll, it gives you a fake hit of dopamine, and it can, over time, reduce your ability to produce it yourself. Shoot. It makes it harder to finish homework. It makes it harder to set the table. It makes it harder to actually kind of get tasks done. So that's the one that for me is like, ooh, that feels really scary, because we need to be able to do stuff to like live. So that one feels kind of really anxious for me. So again, limiting scrolling for your brain health, super, super, super important.
Can we say the flip side of that? How many of y'all like people playing with you in your time? How many people like folks thinking they're gonna fall for the okie doke? Nobody? Okay. I was reading a book at the top of the year called Rest is Resistance, and that was by design. We want people to be attached to this.
So they can sell it.
By design. And I was like, you're not gonna rob me of me in this life. So I had to take a couple apps off. I still got Facebook. But it put me in another headspace of like, how dare you, right? I still go on to get my cute shoes and such, but to know that someone made that by design so you would be attached to it, nah.
One of the things a friend of mine says, who knows a lot more about this than I do, who's in marketing, is if you can't identify what they're selling you.
Ooh.
Because in terms of your data, your information, etc.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting a little off topic. Sorry.
No, it's wild. I'm multilingual, and they'll bring up the commercials. They're like, "Do you want this in English or Spanish?" I'm like, "Not today." Yes, they are doing data fishing. Okay. Any other questions around mental health, social media, connection, maintaining balance, seeing what struggle might look like in a peer, healthy ways to engage with technology? Yes, ma'am.
Do you guys think that there should be an age range around social media?
The question is, do you think there should be an age range around access to social media?
Yes, but it's very hard because it is like people use it for different reasons. I think kids under 10, definitely not. Maybe kids under 12, they really don't need it. But I think what you do on social media should be guided and instructed by like the people who are smarter and older than you. I think that young children should not have any kind of social media profiles and things like that, because what they don't realize is that there are people who are not wanting to keep them safe, people who are targeting them, and kids don't know the difference. Like, they think that these are my friends and these are people, and they could be completely not who they say they are, and trying to explain that to a child is very, very difficult. So I find myself in situations where children are in vulnerable positions. They don't know what the law says about the sexting and the pictures and the sharing it between classmates. I mean, these are real things that are happening, and you can get in trouble for those things. So if you aren't able to understand like the legality of these and the consequences of what you do on social media, then you shouldn't have access to it. And that could be different ages for different families.
If you want to, oh, sorry.
I got something, I'm sorry. As a parent, we have to be careful too because of the peer pressure. That pressure is between the groups of the kids. For example, my kid has 12 and 11, they don't have social media, they didn't ask for until they have the pressure on the school that some of kids, they have TikTok, Instagram, or whatever. So we have to be aware as a parents of these peer pressure groups.
Yep.
So what I'm hearing from the parent is you may have your guidelines. My child is 11 or 12, no social media. But in school, everyone's TikToking away. So how do parents navigate the social or the peer pressure of their child engaging with social media? So you talked about the harms and everybody's not safe. What about, I don't know, 90% of this stuff isn't real? Like, do young people understand what is real and what is, like you're dropping your bank account, your $15,000 deposit, but you're switching between your savings and your bank, like you're not making that much money.
Yeah, and I am definitely not a social media expert by use or training, so let me say that. But the thing I'll offer for this question, as well as to loop back to this young person's question, is I actually don't think adults navigate social media well either. So there are different risks involved, and I think we have to be a lot more intentional about protecting our kiddos, like a lot more intentional. The adults in my practice aren't navigating it well either. They're really not, in terms of self-esteem, in terms of dialogue, in terms of healthy boundaries. But this not real piece, the piece that is coming up over and over again, kind of in the research and what I'm seeing in my practice, is related to body image and self-esteem, because there's these filters that sometimes you can't catch when you're looking at it. And so like none of it's real. And so you're looking at maybe this person's body or this person's face, for all different kinds of people. And they're comparing themselves against something that is not real. And it can really get in your brain. It gets in my brain sometimes. It can just really get in there. And so then you're looking in the mirror and thinking, oh, I want to look like that. That person doesn't look like that. Mm-hmm. They don't. I promise.
And they're not happy.
I promise you they don't. So, the body image piece, they're related to all kinds of ways we exercise, or our relationship to food or nutrition can be really negatively impacted by social media. Yeah, by the stuff that's not real.
Yeah. I just want to add, I was supporting a friend whose family member was in ICU. So there are people who are on their last of last. And I saw a lot of just, clinicians on their phone chilling a lot with beeping going off. And I'm like, what is going on right here? So you are correct. We are adults attached to technology as well. Going to move on to vaping and let our young, brilliant mind lead with those questions.
So one of the questions was, can you speak more on the potential health risks with vaping for young people?
I'll go ahead and answer that. Again, my name is Bolu. I'm a clinical smoking cessation specialist at Duke. And the health risks are vast. Vaping has only been around less than 10 years, and so we don't have all the research that we do with cigarette smoking. We know what the harms, we know the cancer connections with cigarette smoking, but we don't quite know exactly what's going on with vaping. And unfortunately, the people who are vaping now are going to be the ones who are going to tell us what vaping is going to do to you in the future. What we're seeing right now, especially with younger kids, adolescents, and teens, is that they're developing something called popcorn lung, which sounds a little less, it sounds very nice. But popcorn lung is basically scarring of the lungs to the point where the lungs don't function. If anybody knows, or if anybody's aware about transplant and how that works, organs do not grow on trees. They do not come cheap. And when people are vaping as much as they are, and they develop popcorn lung, they need to have not a lung transplant, but lung transplants. So you have 2 lungs in your body, both of those will probably need to be replaced, especially if you develop severe popcorn lung. Also, we're seeing that, along with all of our mental health specialists, that, vaping increases anxiety, it increases depression. You get on a cycle that is very hard to get off. And as everybody was mentioning about, your mental health, that can have also lasting effects, not only just for your mental health, physical health, but going into your adulthood. And so that is probably even more dangerous. But as far as what we really know about vaping, we don't know a lot yet. And that's the scary part.
Everything she said is it. We don't know a lot, so don't volunteer to be a lab rat. That is basically the thing you should take home. So decreased, attention. You're not able to pay attention at school or pay attention at work because of that nicotine in your body, or delayed heart growth, delayed lung lung development, all of that is associated with vaping. So just don't start so that you don't have those issues. But one thing I did want to kind of point out is we finish developing around 25, and vaping is an epidemic for people who are younger than 25. So we're not even fully seeing how vaping is truly affecting everyone. Like Dr. Bolu mentioned earlier, we're going to start realizing the long-term effects of vaping maybe 5-10 years down the line. And hopefully we're able to study that, but who knows, because these teens are dying, like very real life dying from strokes, heart attacks, they're not making it. So yeah, I didn't want to leave that on a depressing note. However, that's what the vaping epidemic is kind of turning that into.
I just have to add, because we're talking about vaping, it's not just vaping nicotine, it's vaping marijuana too. So that makes it a lot of times worse. Like, that's not a number that I can like say statistically, but it's a lot of times worse, because now you have a younger population that can easily access and hide that their use, because they're not smoking a cigarette, they're vaping, and it's so easy. They have it in school, they're vaping, they go to the bathroom, they're vaping, they have it in their pocket, they're vaping, and they're vaping things that they don't even know what they're using. And it can be cannabis, and it's more potent, more dangerous, and your brain is not developed until it's 24, 25. So we have a huge problem, and the younger you start, the longer that it continues, and the more problem we have in the future.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that, there was actually a recent study that came out looking at marijuana use and showing that it also has the same effects as tobacco use as far as cardiovascular health risks on your cardiovascular system. So it can also increase your risk for heart attack, stroke, and things of that nature. So use substances very carefully. If not at all, honestly. You know, there really should not be nothing going into your lungs outside of air. That's what your lungs were designed for. That's what you should be using them for.
You need to make a T-shirt. All this is great information. Don't be a lab rat. It was great. So vaping is kind of like long COVID. We're watching this unfold in real life. So going back to like risk and prevention and informed decision making, like you really don't know. This is running a line like right next to COVID-19. Wow. Yep.
So based on the responses, vaping is just another cycle of smoking. So based on our policies and the capitalistic society that we live in, what are some of the solutions that we can create going forward so that we don't recreate another type of cycle that'll happen after vaping?
That's a good question right there.
So the question was, what are some solutions so we don't repeat the cycle again?
As it relates to policy.
Right.
And can we give Sorry. Young folks might not know this policy. It took them decades to make the connection between smoking and lung cancer. I mean decades, when it's very clear that nothing belongs in your lungs but air. It took decades and $1 gazillion of research to make policy for that, right? After they made the connection, it was like, you can't smoke in our building, smoke outside type of policy.
But they knew what was making them money. So that overshadowed what was going to be better for your health.
So,
as long as my pockets are fat, I don't care about what you're suffering.
so what she's saying on top of that, she doesn't care if you make the connection between smoking and lung cancer at all, because I'm still making more money. Policymakers. So how is vaping going to be? How do we innovate with vaping so it's not another 80-year connection and folks are trying to make their money? My gosh, Public Health 101.
That is a very loaded question, and unfortunately, we don't have 3 weeks to answer that. But I'll just put it this way. The tobacco industry has a lot of money. They have trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. As Dr. Banks opened up in our monologue, they're far-reaching more than just your convenience store, your tobacco vape shop. You know, they're in certain systems, you know, throughout the country. They may even be giving to certain educational systems, like for high schools. And what that does is that does not allow the proper entities to actually speak against tobacco like I can. I'm not taking tobacco money, so I can voice my opinion on how bad tobacco is. I will also make very clear that vaping is tobacco. Vaping is smoking. Smoking is not good for you. Vaping is not good for you. And to put that into perspective, a vape, which is about, on average, you can go to, Sheetz or a gas station, you can get a 5% vape. That's about 50 milligrams of nicotine. You have about 10 ml. Sorry, I'm not really that great with math, but we'll do it real quick. That's equivalent to 500 milligrams of nicotine. A pack of cigarettes is about 20 milligrams. And so when you think about how much you could be vaping a pack of cigarettes within an hour or less. So that one vape holds at least 50 packs of cigarettes. So when we have these young people who are going through vapes and vape pods at the rates that they're going through, this is even worse than cigarette use. So again, we're trying to get rid of, we've been working over decades, and probably longer decades than I've even been around, to get rid of smoking. And to think that, we're replacing this with something that's healthier and better. No, we're not. We're increasing how much it costs. I've never known smoking or vaping to make somebody rich unless you work for the tobacco company. We're increasing worse mental health outcomes, worse health outcomes for people, not just teens, but adults. Teenagers, unfortunately, you become adults at some point, okay? So if you do not tackle this now, it does not go away in your future. Do you want to be somebody who's 70 and 80 years old still vaping? Ask yourself that question. I'm sure a lot of people who started smoking at the age of 15 did not think, or even younger, because we know people start younger, they did not think at the age of 60 or 70 or 80, maybe even 90 if they live that long, that they would still be addicted to nicotine or smoking. No one ever goes into thinking about the future. They think about the present. And unfortunately, if you don't think about the future, that present is going to catch up with that, and you will be in the same spot. So basically, go back to the policy question. It's going to take you guys to use your voice. It's going to take this generation to speak up, to speak to each other, to start understanding exactly what vaping is. It's not just a way to get nicotine. We're looking at systems, we're looking at economy, we're looking at a lot of other things that are going to be affected if we cannot get this under control.
Wow, thank you. That was really, really, really good. So now I want to move on to the COVID-related questions. So one of them was, how could COVID impact mental health, especially for the youth?
Oh goodness, we could talk for the next week about this. I'll touch on two quick things that maybe some people aren't thinking about. Before that, the big thing was, oh gosh, it hurt all of our mental health. With the early research and then the more contemporary research, but even during stuff coming out during 2020, 2021, there was the terminology that was being used was a tsunami of mental health concerns, and that the mental health impact of the COVID-19 pandemic would dwarf the physical health impact. And you can think of how significant the physical health impact was. So that much, much more. And so there are ways that we saw increased rates of depression, increased rates of trauma, anxiety, et cetera, so many things. The two I'll touch on really quick for the youth is a particular type of depression and a particular type of anxiety. And it's called existential depression and existential anxiety. And we saw a pretty sharp increase in both of those things. And what that means is ways that people were afraid of and thinking about death. Okay, so there were death, meaning of life, Who am I? What is the world? These really big questions that we think of as like existential questions. They may be related to faith or spirituality, as well as things like death, reality, etc. We saw a pretty big uptick in both of those, in existential depression and existential anxiety for youth, because you're experiencing kind of the rug being pulled out from under you. Like, what is happening in the world? Nothing feels certain anymore. All of us know someone or multiple people who died, people who are continuing to suffer. So that type of depression and anxiety is a little tricky. I said earlier, like, oh my goodness, we have really good treatments for so many things, and I want you to hear that because there's so many reasons to have hope if you are living with any type of mental illness. And with that, it's a little trickier to treat existential anxiety or depression. And so we're still figuring that out, I'll be honest with you. But it's really important to tell someone if you're having those questions, if you're having those thoughts, because the thoughts related to suicide or harming yourself correlate a little more. So they go together a little more with those types of depression and anxiety because it can feel so overwhelming. So COVID-19, in terms of impact on youth mental health, we saw an uptick in concerns in terms of thoughts of suicides or thoughts of harming yourself. And it's really important for us to have trusted adults, and for the adults in the room to be a trusted adult, so that our youth can talk to us about it. That's where I would start. There's so many other things, but that's where I would start.
Trying to follow all the rules. We're at times. No. I think we want to give you the mic to say the final word, and this isn't a scripted question, but one of the things that we talk about with our young people is sometimes being asked to relive your trauma. Like, how bad was it for you? Tell us all of the things. You just mentioned a lot of things that young people may be going through. You talked about present moment and where they might be in 40 or 50 years. Like, these little things can continue to nip away at your body and your health. What is the takeaway? I know the takeaway is take care of yourself as young people, but what is the walk away, we say drop the mic moment for young people? One thing you want them to take away, given your expertise, to take care of themselves in this moment so that they will be healthy and happy and not in a hypertensive crisis with their blood pressure at 220 over 110 because their body has had all this damage and they're only 40 years old. So what is the glimmer of hope or the takeaway that young folks can do daily or today? We don't always ask about hope, do we?
So the good thing is that children, adolescents are resilient. So it's not too late if you are struggling with mental health. It's not too late if you're struggling with substance use. Children are resilient. Their brains recover better than adults. So you have time, and the kids are influencing each other. So if you find someone who agrees and can identify with your concerns in the community, it's just being loud and speaking up about it. Because obviously we see right now there's just a trend, like welcoming people, like kids, they influence everybody in the community around them. So if we start to change the trend and the pattern and say, hey, this is not acceptable. And sometimes kids don't care anything about the medical impact of what I'm saying. Don't do this because of this. It's your money. Hey, do you rather buy some Jordans instead of spending it on a vape or some cigarettes? Or like, what do you, like, you want to buy a new outfit or get your, new Nintendo or whatever it is. But so we really have to just speak up and we ask the questions. We ask kids, how are they doing? It's okay to talk about your mental health. It's okay to not have a good day. Like, we have bad days. So we really have to ask, and we can't penalize them for feeling a certain way. When you notice the cuts on them, when you notice that they've been using drugs, like, hey, how would your life be different if you weren't doing that? Or like, what is it? I hear that you're struggling. Like, tell me about that. And so I think we just have to talk about it. That's just how it starts. So hopefully everybody kind of feels encouraged to do that and just in an environment that's safe.
I'll make mine very, very simple and very short. If you are not vaping, don't start, and you won't have to quit. That's it.
Lab rat all over.
If I had to summarize, good enough is good enough. All you gotta be is you, every day, all day, for the rest of your life. Make sure you're around people who are letting you figure out who that is and holding on tight to it.
Once again, everything that they said. But honestly, vaping is the renormalization of smoking. So let's try and change that perception. One lasting thing is that the tobacco industry is targeting us as in minorities, African Americans, young people. So don't fall for it. Don't be targeted. Fight back, use your voice, advocate, kind of, change the perception of smoking, and don't succumb to peer pressure. In fact, peer pressure someone else to not smoke and not to vape. So, yes.
Can we give our panelists a round of applause? Can we give the awesome co-moderator a round of applause? And again, want to thank the Wake County team for putting together an event where 3 very pressing issues are impacting particularly our communities. You guys said let's a lot. Let's do this and let's do this. Y'all don't need permission to use your voice. So my takeaway is say it with your chest. Communities, and I've shared this with you, when they need something to be popular, they come to minority communities and they sell it to you first. You're not gonna rob my community of itself either. So you are more than equipped. I hope that you have filled your heads with great knowledge, great quotes, great analogies, great places to do your technology and your kitchen and all the other great things. It is now an opportunity for you to fill your belly. And so our wonderful partners at Wake County have provided some we'll say grub, that's my generation, some grub for your tummy as we end this panel discussion. And also, who remembers what I shared about the raffle? Yes, Dr. Banks ends with pop quizzes too. Anyone remember the conditions of the raffle? I'll put up a visual cue here. Just to, listen, young people are going to lead the way. The young man said, you have to go around to all of the tables. Mr. AZ from Southeast Raleigh Promise. You have an opportunity. Part of this event that they have organized is a resource fair. And so a lot of this is information, tools. You have tables at the entryway of this library with people and tools and information that you can take for yourself, you can take for other young people, and you can see where these young people are on their journeys to become our future leaders. So it's very simple. You go to the table, you give them your initials, you might get a couple of pieces of swag and such along the way, and then you could be entered to the raffle. No one has asked, like, well, what is the raffle? Is it $500? No, it's not. It is 2 Health Lit for Wake self-care backpacks filled with goodies, mindfulness coloring book, coloring pencils, a really dope water bottle, and more. You get an emergency preparedness backpack and more. So make sure that you not only become a resource for your community, but you take advantage of the resources before you leave here today. I am Dr. Bobby Banks, also known as Doc's Child, and we are signing off. Thanks so much for attending the Ask the Doc panel, titled formerly Mind Over Matter, Empowering Youth to Address Vaping, Mental Health, and COVID-19. May the 4th be with you.